In the heart of Los Feliz, Los Angeles, nestled among the winding roads and towering trees, lies a house shrouded in mystery and fear. This was once the home of Peter Lorre, the iconic actor renowned for his chilling roles in films like M and The Maltese Falcon. Even in life, his intense gaze and peculiar voice left an unforgettable impression. But in death, they've become something far more sinister. The current owners of the house, a young couple drawn to its mid-century charm, had no idea what awaited them when they moved in. From the moment they set foot in the house, an eerie sense of being watched lingered. At first, they brushed it off as the strangeness of settling into a new home. But soon, the inexplicable began to unfold. It started with whispers. Late at night, as the couple lay in bed, they would hear faint murmurs echoing through the halls. The voice was soft but chillingly familiar, carrying the unmistakable inflection of Lorre's unique cadence. It seemed to drift through the walls, ceasing abruptly when they tried to locate its source. One evening, the husband, an amateur historian, was unpacking a box of books in the study when he felt a cold draft sweep past him. He turned, expecting to see an open window, but instead, he glimpsed a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the room. The figure's silhouette was unmistakable, the hunched posture, the piercing eyes. It was Peter Lorre himself. Before the man could react, the apparition faded into the darkness. Determined to uncover the truth, the couple delved into the history of the house. They learned that Lorre had spent his final years there, battling declining health and inner demons. He was known to pace the halls late at night, muttering to himself as he wrestled with the characters that had defined his career. Some locals believed that the house had absorbed his restless energy, trapping his spirit within its walls. The activity escalated as the couple began renovations. Tools went missing, only to reappear in strange places. Lights flickered, and the smell of Lorre's favorite pipe tobacco occasionally wafted through the air. The most chilling event occurred in the dining room, where they discovered an old mirror tucked away behind a panel. When they hung it on the wall, they began to see fleeting reflections of Lorre's face, his expression mournful and accusatory. Desperate for answers, the couple invited a paranormal investigator to the house. The investigator recorded strange EVP, electronic voice phenomena in which a voice, eerily similar to Lorre's, whispered lines from his movies, particularly the haunting phrase, "I always know who you are." Unable to endure the relentless activity, the couple eventually moved out, leaving the house empty once again. To this day, neighbors report hearing soft whispers and seeing lights flickering in the windows. Some claim that late at night, they've spotted a shadowy figure standing on the balcony, staring into the Los Angeles skyline. Peter Lorre's house in Los Feliz remains a chilling reminder that some spirits, particularly those as enigmatic and intense as his, may never truly rest. Months after the couple moved out, the house sat abandoned, the for sale sign weathered and leaning. Yet, its emptiness was deceptive. Local teenagers, emboldened by ghost stories, often dared each other to trespass. One night, a group of 3 ventured inside, armed with flashlights and bravado. The air inside was heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Dust coated the floors, and the faded wallpaper seemed to ripple in the dim light, as though alive. They crept through the halls, whispering nervously, when one of them, a boy named Ethan, froze. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, his flashlight trembling. The others strained their ears and caught at a faint, rhythmic tapping. It seemed to come from the upstairs hallway, where Peter Lorre's bedroom had once been. Against their better judgment, they followed the sound, their steps echoing ominously. When they reached the top of the stairs, the tapping stopped. The hallway stretched before them, lined with closed doors. A draft stirred the curtains at the far end, revealing a locked attic door that none of them had noticed before. Ethan, feeling a surge of false courage, reached for the door's rusty handle. As his fingers touched the cold metal, the tapping resumed, louder this time and coming from behind the door. Before anyone could speak, it swung open with a creak, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. "I don't think we should go up there," one of the girls stammered, clutching Ethan's arm. but he was already climbing. Each step groaned under his weight, the sound mingling with his nervous breath. The others reluctantly followed, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. At the top, they found a small, cluttered space filled with forgotten relics. A cracked vanity mirror, a moth-eaten armchair, and a stack of yellowed scripts. On the floor lay an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, its spools still intact. "What is this?" Ethan murmured, kneeling to inspect it. As he reached out to touch it, the recorder clicked on by itself. The reel spun, and the room filled with the scratchy sound of Peter Lorre's voice. It wasn't a recording of one of his movies, but something more personal, a series of strange, disjointed phrases. "They don't understand. Always watching. Waiting for the final curtain." The voice cracked, then descended into a guttural laugh that echoed so loudly the teens dropped their flashlights. When they scrambled to pick them up, the beam of one landed on the mirror. In the reflection, they weren't alone. Peter Lorre stood behind them, his sunken eyes locked onto theirs, his mouth twisting into a sinister smile. His voice cut through the air, clear and chilling. "You shouldn't have come here." The flashlights flickered and died, plunging the attic into darkness. Below, the front door slammed shut, as if sealing their fate. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to those teens. The house remains locked, its mystery deepening. Locals say the attic window sometimes lights up at night, and if you're brave enough to stand near the gate, you might hear the faint hum of Peter Lorre's voice whispering from within. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. Weeks after the teenagers' disappearance, their families hired private investigators to search the house. But they found no trace of the teens, no backpacks, no flashlights, no footprints. The only clue was the attic door, which had inexplicably vanished. Where the entrance once stood was now just a solid, unbroken wall. The house was declared a structural anomaly by city inspectors, who found no logical explanation for the disappearing attic. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the house was alive, shifting its walls and passages to trap unwelcome visitors. Others whispered that Peter Lorre's spirit had sealed the attic himself, his way of silencing intruders. Despite its growing infamy, one man dared to move in. Jacob Kane, a writer obsessed with unraveling Hollywood's darkest mysteries, purchased the property with the intention of documenting its haunted history. "Ghosts thrive on attention," he told reporters. "Let's see what Peter Lorre has to say when someone listens for once." Kane set up cameras in every room and filled notebooks with his observations. For days, the house was silent, almost unnervingly so. Then, on the fifth night, things began to stir. At precisely 3:17 a.m., a camera in the dining room caught movement. A chair, tucked neatly under the table, slid out as if pulled by an invisible hand. The sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, followed, though no figure appeared. Kane, reviewing the footage the next morning, felt a mix of fear and excitement. "It's starting," he wrote in his journal. He decided to push further, conducting seances in the living room and reading aloud excerpts from Lorre's films. The activity grew bolder. Books fell from shelves. The chandelier swayed as though an unseen figure were pacing below it. Kane awoke one night to the smell of burning matches, his bedroom filled with the acrid scent. When he checked the cameras, he saw the silhouette of a man standing at the foot of his bed watching him. But it was what he discovered in the basement that changed everything. While exploring the crawlspace, Kane found a hidden door covered in decades of dust. Behind it was a staircase leading down to a small, windowless room. The walls were lined with photographs, black and white stills of Peter Lorre in his most iconic roles. In the center of the room was a single wooden chair, and on it sat a reel of film. Kane, both terrified and exhilarated, took the reel upstairs to view it on his projector. The footage was grainy and unsteady, but it wasn't a film he recognized. It showed Peter Lorre, sitting in what appeared to be the same basement room, staring directly into the camera. He began to speak, his voice low and hypnotic. "They've come for me, but they won't take me. Not yet. The performance isn't over." Lorre's eyes darted to something off camera, and his expression darkened. He leaned closer, his face filling the screen. "They'll come for you too. Be ready. The film ended abruptly, the screen plunging Kane's study into darkness. But before he could react, a new sound filled the room. The faint hum of a projector running by itself. The reel was spinning again, only this time, the footage wasn't of Lorre. It was of Kane. The image showed him sitting at his desk, exactly as he was now, except the version on the screen was turning slowly to look behind him. Kane froze, his pulse racing. In the reflection on the projector's screen, he saw it. A shadow moving closer, its outline unmistakably human, its voice whispering, "You shouldn't have come here." The power cut out, plunging the house into silence. The neighbors later reported seeing a dim light flickering in Kane's study that night, but when the police arrived the next morning, the house was empty. Kane's notes were scattered across the floor, his cameras smashed, and the reel of film nowhere to be found. The house remains unsold to this day, a chilling monument to the legend of Peter Lorre and the secrets he took to the grave or perhaps refused to leave behind. And sometimes, late at night, passers-by swear they can hear the faint clicking of a projector running in the darkness. Months passed, and the mystery of Jacob Kane's disappearance became the stuff of urban legend. Ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and conspiracy theorists flocked to the edges of the property, daring each other to cross the rusting iron gate. Most left empty-handed, spooked by the oppressive silence of the house. But one group, a pair of documentarians, refused to be deterred. Mia and Aaron specialized in unraveling Hollywood's darker corners, and the Lorre house was their white whale. With permits they claimed were legitimate, they entered the house just before dusk, armed with high-definition cameras, infrared sensors, and a drone to map the interior. The house greeted them with an unnerving stillness. Dust floated in beams of dying sunlight as they made their way through the first floor. Aaron joked about the old cliché of haunted houses, his laughter bouncing hollowly off the walls. Mia, however, felt the weight of something unseen, watching, waiting. By the time night fell, the temperature in the house had dropped significantly. Aaron, frustrated by the lack of any activity, set up a thermal camera in the dining room while Mia reviewed footage on her laptop. "Wait," she said suddenly, her voice tight. She rewound a clip of the dining room. "Look at this." On the screen, a shadow passed across the dining table, though no one had been in the room. The shape paused for a moment before moving toward the camera, growing darker and more defined. Just before the footage cut out, the unmistakable outline of Peter Lorre's face appeared, inches from the lens. "Okay, that's creepy," Aaron admitted, his bravado faltering. The two decided to head upstairs, following the path the teenagers had taken months before. As they climbed, the creaking of the old stairs seemed unnaturally loud, echoing as if the house itself was amplifying the sound. At the top, they found a hallway lined with closed doors. One door stood slightly ajar, revealing a faint light flickering within. Mia hesitated, but Aaron, eager to capture something sensational, pushed it open. Inside, the room was empty except for a single item: the mirror the original couple had found in the dining room. It leaned against the far wall, its surface strangely clean, as if untouched by time. "It's just a mirror," Aaron said, stepping closer. But as he raised his camera, the reflection in the mirror shifted. Instead of Aaron and Mia, the glass showed the room as it had been decades ago, a lavish study, with Peter Lorre seated at a desk. He looked directly at them, his eyes sharp and unblinking. "Turn it off," Mia whispered, gripping Aaron's arm. "I'm not recording this," he replied, his voice trembling. "It's happening live." Lorre's reflection began to move, though the room around them remained still. He stood, walked to the edge of the mirror, and then stepped out of the reflection entirely. The room filled with a low, guttural sound, a mixture of laughter and growls that made the walls vibrate. The mirror's surface began to ripple like water, and a hand, pale and clawed, reached through, grasping the edge as if something were trying to pull itself free. Mia screamed, yanking Aaron out of the room just as the door slammed shut behind them. The hallway lights flickered violently, and the sound of hurried footsteps came from above. "That's not possible," Mia gasped, glancing up. Aaron followed her gaze. The attic door, the one that was supposed to have disappeared, was back, its frame warped and splintered. Before either could speak, the door swung open, revealing the staircase spiraling into darkness. From the depths came the unmistakable sound of a film reel spinning, followed by Lorre's voice, calm yet menacing. The third act awaits. The light from their equipment failed, plunging them into complete darkness. And then, just as quickly, silence. The next morning, their van was found parked outside, the keys still in the ignition. Inside the house, all their equipment was gone, and their names were added to the growing list of those who had vanished without a trace. To this day, no one knows what lies at the top of that attic staircase or what Peter Lorre's spirit guards so fiercely. The house continues to stand, silent and foreboding, daring the brave or the foolish to uncover its secrets. But those who try often learn the hard way. Some stories are better left untold. The disappearance of Mia and Aaron drew the attention of law enforcement. For the first time in years, the house was sealed off, declared a crime scene. A seasoned detective, Luis Moreno, led the investigation. Skeptical of the supernatural, Moreno was determined to uncover a rational explanation for the house's sinister reputation. Moreno entered the house alone one overcast morning, armed only with a flashlight and his notebook. The air inside was thick, oppressive, and colder than the outside. The walls seemed to lean inward, as if the house was alive and watching him. He started in the basement, where Jacob Kane had found the mysterious reel of film. Moreno found the hidden door exactly where the reports claimed it was. Pushing it open, he descended the stairs into the windowless room. The photographs of Peter Lorre were gone, but the wooden chair remained, now tipped over. On the floor, beneath a layer of dust, was a reel of film identical to the one Kane had described. Moreno hesitated, his heart pounding, but his curiosity won. He carried the reel upstairs and set it on an old projector he found in the study. As the film began to play, the flickering light cast long, erratic shadows across the walls. The footage was clearer than he expected. It began with Peter Lorre sitting in the very room where Moreno now stood. Lorre's expression was somber, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He spoke directly to the camera, his voice low and deliberate. "They never understand," he began. "It wasn't the roles, it was the house. It watches, it listens, takes, and it never gives back. I tried to leave, but it wouldn't let me. Now I belong to it, as will you." The image shifted abruptly. Moreno saw himself on the screen, standing exactly as he was, watching the film. The room in the footage was identical to the one he was in, except for one detail. A dark figure stood behind him, its face obscured but its form unmistakably human. Moreno spun around, flashlight trembling, but the room was empty. When he turned back to the screen, the footage had changed again. Now it showed the attic staircase, the camera slowly ascending as if pulled by an invisible force. The projector groaned, and the image flickered, but the sound was unmistakable. Lorre's voice, chanting softly in a language Moreno didn't recognize. Unable to stop himself, Moreno felt his feet moving. He climbed the stairs, flashlight barely illuminating the path ahead. When he reached the top, the attic door creaked open, revealing the spiral staircase that had lured so many before him. The air grew colder with each step, and the chanting grew louder, reverberating off the narrow walls. At the bottom of the staircase, Moreno found a room that defied all logic. It was vast, cavernous, filled with rows of empty chairs, all facing a massive screen. The screen flickered to life, and Moreno saw himself once again, now seated in one of the chairs. The camera panned back, revealing the rows filled not with chairs, but with shadowy figures. They turned to face him, their eyes glowing faintly, their faces blurred as if they were halfway between this world and another. And there, in the center of the front row, was Peter Lorre, his gaze piercing through the screen. He raised one hand, and the figures began to rise, their movements synchronized, their whispers filling the air. Moreno tried to run, but his body refused to obey. He felt himself being pulled toward the front of the room, toward Lorre, who smiled faintly. "The performance must continue," Lorre said, his voice echoing in Moreno's mind. The screen went dark, and the house fell silent. When the police entered the house days later, they found no trace of Moreno or his equipment. The attic staircase was gone, and the basement door was sealed as if it had never existed. The house remains abandoned, its windows dark and uninviting. But locals say if you stand outside on a quiet night, you can hear the faint sound of applause, accompanied by a low, sinister whisper. The show must go on. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. Any coincidences with real events or characters are accidental.